This is where I stare off into space. Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. Now listen, if there are women and children around right now, you may want to have them exit the room, because tonight we have got red-blooded American conservative politics from start to finish. I'm being honest here. Some of what's going to be said tonight could offend those that are of a more sensitive makeup. If you feel as if government is the answer to all your problems, and all we need to do is pay more taxes, and then the nanny state, the government, will take care of us, you may want to leave the room and not watch this show tonight, because tonight we're going to take a little bit different perspective on this, and we're going to look. We have three people. We have, of course, the famous State Representative John Shaban from the 131st District, and for those of you unaccustomed, that includes the beautiful towns of Reading, Easton, and Weston will be here, talking about how the state government is overtaxing and overspending. Some of what he has to say is a real eye-opener. And then in addition to that, we have a wonderful author, George W. Schuster, who wrote Obama's War on Free Speech. This is an incredible book, and it delineates what this president administration has done to try to stifle free speech. And in addition to that, and this is the part where really women and children need to leave the room, because right here in this studio, we have Bob MacGuffie, one of the heads of the Connecticut Tea Party, and this guy is loaded for bear. He's got billboards that are out there. Again, I don't want to offend anyone, so you may want to avert your eyes, but here's in a billboard, Obama, the entry drug to socialism. This is what you're up to tonight, so if you want to maybe turn to The View rerun or something like that, that might be the way to go. But if you're a cold-eyed person looking at what's going on in our economy right now, looking at what's happening on the state and federal government, stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of informative information, and it may just have an impact on how you're going to vote 2 months from now. But without any further ado, I want to go to an interview that we did with our Congressman Jim Himes. Jim Himes is a Connecticut congressman. He's been endorsed by Barack Obama and the Democratic Party, and he spoke at the Parks and Rec in Ridgefield. And here's a little bit of what he had to say.
The show? The Marty Heiser Show, because I'm self-absorbed. And we're trying to get you on. We've had your opponent on, so we want to get you on. Do you have a card for me? Yeah, I gave it to him. Yeah. Card. We're all set. Okay. All right, but can I ask you a couple quick questions? Yeah, absolutely. All right. What's the name of the show? The Marty Heiser Show. Because I'm self-absorbed and, Real quick, these will be quick questions. You don't have to give long answers. Yeah. In light of the fact that in 44 states the unemployment rate actually went up, does that give you pause on some of the economic policies you and your party have been implementing or trying to put through in the Congress?
Well, if you want to talk about numbers, since I've been in Congress and since this president has been in Congress, let's talk about what the economy was doing when we got there. 750,000 jobs being lost every month, the economy contracting by 8%. Today we've had 26 months straight of national job growth. It's not enough, but it's a start. What has the stock market done since we got there? Stock market is
almost up to the highs that it were before, but 44 states, like a month ago, saw their unemployment rate go up. That's what I was asking about.
Well, month to month, unemployment rates are going to go up and down. If you're asking a question about America, the unemployment rate is down pretty significantly in this president's term. The stock market has doubled. When we arrived at the trough of this process, $17 trillion in American assets were gone. Household, equity, everything gone. About $9 trillion of that has been recovered. So if you want to talk about the numbers, how the numbers have changed, which is different than the way people feel, the numbers tell a story that I think this president can be pretty proud of.
Two quick questions. One, does it cause you to cringe at all when you see your president put forth a commercial where it says that his opponent somehow had a hand in a woman's death by cancer?
I didn't actually see that ad, so I
never seen that ad?
I haven't seen the ad. They're not doing, the presidential candidates aren't doing much advertising in Connecticut, so I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that particular ad.
Okay, last question is, in light of your energy policy, does it cause you some concern that your party stood in the way of the Keystone pipeline coming through?
Well, let's be clear about what was stood in the way of. by both the president and the Democratic Party within the House. And by the way, we've had a Republican House now for 2 years, right? If you look at Keystone, on the ground, there were Democratic and Republican governors who opposed it. Why? Because it runs over the Oglala Reservoir, which is one of the most important sources of fresh water for the Midwest. It crosses a line. I think most people would stand in my camp, which is, if we can do it safely and not screw up reservoirs, I wish we didn't. I wish we were doing more clean, sustainable energy. But if we can do it safely, and by the way, I say this about fracking and nuclear, if we can do it safely, and I do believe that we can do it safely, we probably should or have to. But I am never going to sign up for fast track stuff, which says, let's obliterate the regulation that keeps it safe. Again, I'll ask you to look back to the 11 guys who died on the Deepwater Horizon platform. I'm going to say, that can't happen again. So it just needs to be done safely in the energy world.
Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And please come on the show. We want you. All right. Well, boys and girls, what we just heard was a congressman who did not tell the truth. Because if you believe for 1 minute that he hasn't heard that commercial about where President Obama blames Mitt Romney for killing a person dying from cancer, you're just, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I want to sell you. And another thing, there are 34,000 pipelines coming in and out of our country, and the Keystone Pipeline, the reason they didn't is because they're beholden to the environmental extremists. That's why. It has nothing to do with regulations or saving reservoirs or anything else. Gas at $4 a gallon? Keep voting these guys in. Civility in politics? Keep voting these guys in. You're not going to get a spin on the Marty Heiser Show. Thanks for joining us, and let's go back to the studio.
Okay, welcome back. Well, there you have it. You know, sometimes when you can't get guys to go on your show, you got to go get them. So that was your Congressman Jim Himes. I do appreciate him doing the interview, and we'd still like to have him come in where he can answer questions. But you know, you have to be a proud and courageous politician, public servant, like my next guest, John Shaban. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. Now you are up there on the front lines in Hartford. You're going against a Democratic governor, a Democratic-controlled state Senate, and a Democratic-controlled House of Legislatures. How do you do it? How do you keep your sanity? And what does all this Democratic control mean for the citizens of Connecticut?
Well, it's how do I do it? Well, you do it one day at a time, and sometimes you run into the wall and bang it and fall down. You get up and you run into it again, because believe it or not, even though we are a minority, and even though it's an uphill battle, we're making a slight difference every day, which over cumulatively we're going to make a change. And in each election, the good news is at each election, the Republicans are slowly taking back some balance in the House. We gained seats. Last time, I think we got 13 new seats last time. This election at the state Senate, I think it's 5 or 6 seats swing, then it becomes a Republican majority. So regardless of whether you take back the majority or not, the numbers are shifting toward a more balanced equation. And that's really the issue there. At a minimum, regardless of what Democratic, Republican politics you may ascribe to, some level of balance is needed for our type of government to work, because when it's one party rule at every at all 3 branches, mistakes are made. You need
it seems to me, and this goes for the town of Ridgefield, the state, or at the federal level, there needs to be some checks and balances. Those guys that put together this government were pretty smart, and when you have separations of power, you have checks and balances, and you avoid these incredible swings one way or the other. We're joined by Dave Strait. You know Dave. He's a pretty successful guy, and he always has some thoughts too. But what question do you have for John?
Well, we talked about it before John came on tonight. What is the situation with our budget deficit? I mean, how short are we? What are we going to do to get it cleaned up?
Well, it looks like this time we did it's funny. We're going up next week. I'm on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. We're going to have a meeting next Friday.
That sounds important.
It does.
It's a lot of words.
It really does.
We're going to have a meeting, I think next Wednesday it is, to get an official check-in. But there was a report or a statement released by, I think, the Treasurer, Kevin Lembo, this week that says our deficit for this year might be slightly less than what we thought it was going to be, like 2 and change. And right now, without a gap reduction or a gap adjustment, it's about 150, 160 million bucks. but those numbers change every day depending on how much money's coming in. So, you know, if it's 150 plus a 70-something million dollar gap adjustment, you know, we're probably about 200 million short. And, you know, the word on the street, the party line is, from the other party mostly, is like, well, it's only 1%. And it is roughly about 1%. But, you know, if you take a step back and you look at it, you know, we raised taxes, I say the state of Connecticut, I voted no, $1.8 billion when I first got there. We increased spending by upwards of 7%. I don't know, one business, one government, one household that has actually increased spending in the last 2 years by 7% and been successful at it. So we raised taxes, we increased our spending, and we still came up $200 million short because guess what? We spent too much. Despite raising taxes retroactively too, that was the great part. People came home with paychecks in January, so where's all my money? Well, because we taxed you all the way, or in July, we taxed you all the way back to January. People were dead and buried in the ground, and their estate taxes went up. They had to reopen estates. People were dead. So the whole, you know, death and taxes thing, we, as the state of Connecticut, we actually reached into the grave and pulled a little more money out of people as some lawsuits.
Are we getting any closer to addressing legacy costs? I mean, we've run the state for years and years with allowing people to retire at age 50, and we cover them for the next 50 years.
Right.
Or what are we doing about those legacy costs?
Well, I think, you know, there's lip service paid to that every time. I think there was some positive steps made there. I mean, you may remember when the governor proposed his budget 2 years ago. There were supposed to be union concessions to help kind of address some of
Oh yeah. And then they coaxed the taxes out on the front end because we were going to give concessions on the back end that we never got.
That theoretically, right? That was sort of the idea, and most of the there were some concessions where people retired early, and that saved the taxpayers some money, and there were some concessions, slight adjustments to some of the legacy costs, going forward, nothing going backwards, but really stuff on the edges. Not a person lost their job. We still have a 50-something thousand person workforce.
On the state level.
At the state level.
And Tony, a lot of other people in Connecticut have lost their jobs.
Oh yeah. The public sector's fine. The public sector's fine, and that's really the big issue that I have, and I think we were talking off camera about this.
By the way, if you want to call in and if you have a question, we're going to put the phone number up, but the phone number here is 203-438-2003. If you have a question for any of our guests, don't hesitate to call. We'll put you right on the air. But go ahead.
No, I mean, that's really, I think, the main distinction between the parties, or people who think in this general camp and people who think in that general camp, is there's a large group of people who are now in the majority who think that if the state government is if the government is doing well, hey, we can pay our bills and we're only 200 million short. Well, that's good for the state. There are other people, some of whom I see in this room, and I'm one of them, that say, no, the state is the people in the private sector. So if the private sector is not doing well, I don't care what the public sector is doing.
Well, to that point, and I love Reading, and I don't mean to say anything disparaging about Reading, but the thing that kind of concerns me a little bit is when I hear people in Reading, which are generally conservative people, make comments like, we just got this grant for $300,000 a year for 3 years, and I get all these phone calls saying, and we don't have to pay for it, it's free. It's like, well, somebody's paying for it. And then when one of the departments in town gets a new vehicle and they say, oh, it's free, we don't have to pay for it. Well, somebody's got to pay for it.
Well, speaking of who has to pay for it, our caller's on the air. Caller, do you pay taxes in Connecticut? Caller, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you pay taxes in Connecticut?
Actually, I don't. I'm a senior and I don't get enough in.
Oh, well, anyways, you have a question for John Shaban?
Yes, I do. As I remember, about 6 years ago, the Senator Cappiello helped put a cap on the state spending that was supposed to keep money under control in the state. I was reading today about the $143.6 million deficit at the close of the fiscal year. What's going on?
Excellent question.
That's a great call.
What about that? I mean, in our individual budgets, we've had to cap spending.
Yep.
I know in the town of Ridgefield, we've certainly had to cap spending or tried to keep it under control.
Right.
What's going on with you guys up in Hartford?
Well, it's gone. We spend too much. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. We spend too much. I mean, despite we raised taxes $1.8 billion. By the way, not all of that came in because go figure. You raise taxes. Well, you can't collect taxes from businesses who move out of state. You can't collect taxes from people who don't have a job anymore.
Yeah. See, that's the misnomer that I think sometimes those of my friends on the progressive side think. They just have this idea that if we just raise taxes, if we raise everyone's top rate, if we raise corporate tax rates so it's 39%, the largest in any free country on the planet, guess what? The money's just going to roll in. Well, guess what? People can move.
People vote
Florida has no income tax. You know how many people are going from 203 down to the Florida area code? It's unbelievable. Well, same thing with businesses.
6 months in a day. I mean, that's that's been the cry of a lot of folks. People move out of the state of Connecticut for 6 months in a day to avoid income tax, to avoid some of the property that you get the property tax if you own real estate. But regardless, so I mean, to the caller's question, the spending cap, there were two. There was a statutory spending cap and a constitutional spending cap that the state tried to pass. I forget how long ago it was now. I think it's over 10 years ago. The constitutional spending cap has not been fleshed out. It didn't get through the entire system, but there's a statutory cap in place, and theoretically, we are just under that number because it's a percentage of what you expect your revenues to be. Well, unfortunately, our revenues keep moving around, and they haven't met what they were hoping. So while we may arguably be under the spending cap, we're still spending more than we're making. So, which is a problem. And that after you raise taxes and you raise spending 7%. I mean, that's insane. We spend every year. Our spending goes up, and it's funny because I was a new guy up there. I'm a Republican guy, so I'm not a real fan of taxes. But if we got an honest budget that said, you know what, we're going to cut this spending. Spending's going to go down. Right. Spending's going to go down, and we got to tweak a few taxes. We're going to tax dog shampoos. There was a couple of taxes around the edges.
Tanning booths.
I believe yoga lessons.
Yeah, yoga lessons. You know what? If the state government even just flattened the spending rate,
and you don't shampoo your dog, you're doing good.
That's exactly right. Yeah, but even if we just flattened our spending rate and we raised some money in these little areas, I could live with that. But the fact that we raised our spending rate, we didn't lay off a person. No one wants to see people get laid off. But come on, 55,000. We're the number one employer in the state is the state.
Well, Tony Boucher has a great data point. Every time she comes on the show, she says the same thing. She says Indiana right now employs 1/3 as many people per capita at the state level as we do. We have 3 times as many state employees. Yep. How does that work?
And that's where you get increased spending, 7.2% over the last 2 years. Our spending has gone up 149%. 149% over the last decade.
And our population's gone up barely single digits.
And the killer, how this all fleshes itself out in a business point of view is that our credit rating has gone down from AA2 to AA3. I'm not even sure what that means, but it doesn't sound very good.
It's a slight degradation.
Yeah, but that means objective people are looking at how we're running our finances and they're saying it's not adding up. And then the unemployment rate in Connecticut, as bad as it is on a federal level, it's actually going up. You want a job, go to North Dakota. They have like 1% unemployment. We're up to 8.5% and going up. It's not going down. It's going up. And then I had one other thing, but I forgot what I was going to say. I had a Texas governor moment, but it was equally bad.
The second John stands up and says we got to cut, he hates the elderly. He's against education. He hates puppy dogs.
I hate puppies. I hate puppies, children, and old people. Except I have a dog, I have a mom, and I have 3 kids. I don't know how that works.
You hate him.
But apparently I hate him.
You need a birth certificate. You sure you do have a mother?
I do.
You didn't just arrive out of a cave somewhere with the Neanderthals, like the Tea Party guys who come out here. Exactly. Well, listen, if people want to get behind you and they want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you? And I think you're running for re-election here coming up. Someone
I am.
dared to run against you, and I hope they come out and vote. But when is that?
Well, the election's going to be on Election Day in November. But
oddly, how they put that all together.
It's amazing.
It's a beautiful thing. A little efficiency in government.
Don't worry. By the next election, you can even register in the same day. That's a whole different discussion if you want to get that, but not this time around. No, you can go to just enter John Shaban in Google. You get the state site, or Shaban for State Rep is the campaign site.
Yeah. And kind of along those lines, what I'm deeply offended by is the fact that I have to show a photo ID when I go and I vote in Reading, Connecticut. Don't you think that's offensive?
I think it's offensive.
Unbelievable.
At the Democratic Convention, they had to show photo ID twice to get in, and I just think that's
you have to show a photo ID to buy the spray paint. You have to show a photo ID to buy cold medicine.
Yeah,
you have to show a photo ID to play golf in this town.
You know, the funny thing about the funny thing about voter suppression, you know, when you have the Black Panthers out there with clubs and everything at the voting booth, somehow that's not voter suppression. But when you do, when you have to show a photo ID, that's somehow racist and terrible.
It's pure occasion.
Stay tuned. What we're going to do next, we got Bob MacGuffie coming on, and he's going to be he's a member of the Connecticut Tea Party, and he's going to come on. He always has something to say. The first thing I'm going to ask him is, this is the nutmeg state. This is where you have a lot of guys that shop at J. Crew Catalog. This is the home of Yale and intellectuals and progressives. What the heck is the Tea Party doing here? Isn't the Tea Party usually like guys in cowboy hats out in Oklahoma and Wyoming and stuff like that? How can we have the Tea Party here in Connecticut, in the land of boats and intellectuals and tweed jackets and stuff like that? And so, Bob MacGuffie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be here, Marty.
Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and you too have a cable TV show as well.
I do, down in Bridgeport, called Liberty Line. It's on
Liberty Line?
Thursday nights. I'm taking a little hiatus tonight. Come up to see you. So.
I really appreciate it. So what do you whacked out guys in the Tea Party? I have to tell you a quick story. We go down to a Tea Party rally when Barack Obama was speaking in...
He arranged it.
Yeah, okay. But we go down there and we do some interviews. First thing is, every single person we interviewed, it seemed like, was a minority. I thought the Tea Party, you guys were a bunch of racists. And then the next thing is, about half the crowd were immigrants to this country, from India, from Germany, from England.
You know why?
Well, I thought you guys were anti-immigrant, what is going on?
The Eastern Europeans are some of our most fervent patriots because they most recently, 20-something years ago, still had the Russian boot on their neck, and they know what it's like. And they can see it coming here, and that's what they're concerned about. And they are full-throated in our movement. But I did want to.
Please, yes. What do you have?
As a reaction to your video on Mr. Himes, we have special. We have the answer. We have the answer for him. So these will be out around the state and around certainly around the district. And
now, was this yours?
No.
This is up in Milford, and it's by a gas station in Milford on Route 1.
And I'm told that the gas station owner there's business has spiked up since that thing's there, but nobody knows who put it up.
Isn't that terrific?
We can't find out.
Well, you know why? Because of what they suffer. You heard today that Gallup, the Gallup polling agency, was being pressured because their polling numbers weren't being favorable to the president, and they refused to change them. So guess what? The Department of Justice drops a lawsuit on them. So do you think the person that puts that up wants his name associated with it in Connecticut?
No,
I don't think so.
There's no credit on there, but nobody even knows, And we're in the movement, and we figured, we'd love to put something like that up. And we're saying, who did it? Nobody knows who did it. We really,
our next guest is going to be George Schuster, and he's wrote a book called Obama's War on Free Speech. Yep. And one of the things that he cites in the book is how the Tea Party is actually coming under scrutiny by the federal government. Is that something that you've noticed? Have you been audited? Have your emails?
Well, I haven't been audited, but I know they have all our names, and they just put a regulation in the national. Let's see. Well, the Secret Service. They gave them additional authority so that if the Secret Service is guarding a location for a federal officer who's speaking there, they can decide to pick up any protesters that are there and bring them in for questioning and detain them, which you normally would have your First Amendment rights. But that's one thing that they're leaving themselves an option to do, and they did it to a guy down in outside the DNC. Earlier this week in Charlotte. Yeah, they picked,
so you have protesters down at
they picked a guy up, and they knew who he was, and they picked him up and they detained him overnight.
But never charged him.
No, I don't think they charged him with anything. But they will reach, and they have put. Obama has put a lot of executive orders in place in order to move and act and squash free speech if he wants to.
Well, you got to stay on the second part of the show when this author comes out, because I know you have some examples of what he's talking about, but it's chilling to read his book. It really is.
Yeah.
But now let me ask you some questions, okay? I don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, okay?
Impossible.
But I mean, in 2010, we saw this great kind of swing, this wave, this conservative wave that went across the whole country, except somehow Connecticut and California, but that could be a hopeless cause. But Connecticut was somehow missed with that. I mean, is your message, the Tea Party message, resonating with people, or do they think you're a bunch of kooks out there with this yellow flag and people don't really identify?
It depends who you speak to and whether you use Tea Party, whether you say Tea Party or just talk about our principles. Now, when we first emerged on the scene in '09, we were a threat to the whole ruling class and the mainstream media because it's their game and they know what we are.
And we're Republicans and Democrats too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, liberal Republicans on all their houses.
Liberal Republicans and all the Democrats.
Yeah.
And once you see a citizens movement like that rise, they want to push us down. So their avenue for putting us down is to call us bigots and racists and try to find reasons where they could press that case. And they've said it and they've said it and they've said it so many times that the public is confused about what the Tea Party is all about. When you talk to people about our principles of limited government and free markets and individual liberty, they're all with us. When you say Tea Party, some people go, they got a problem with that. So we have to fight that. But we first have to fight the Republicans before we can defeat the Democrats. I mean, we've got liberal Republicans leading this party. And they like the game the way it's set up right now. They like big government.
Here's a classic example in Connecticut. All right, you got Linda McMahon and you got Chris Shays. Okay, I'm going to vote for Linda McMahon. I think she's good. I voted for her in the primaries. I think she's going to bring a sound business practice to government, and I hope she wins. And by the way, she was on this show, and by the way, she's leading in the polls right now. And Chris Murphy, if you're out there, we want you on, but you can stay away because this is actually where you have to answer questions. You might be afraid of that, not controlled. But my point is that Chris Shays will say, hey, I'm liberal. I'm a Republican, but I'm liberal, but I'm the only Republican that can win around here. You guys are sticking to these principles of free enterprise, limited government, and everything else, but you're going to go down in defeat because this is Connecticut, and we're a blue state, and any association with the Tea Party is going to hurt you. Yeah. How do you respond to that?
He doesn't want to fight. And people like him don't want to fight for the principles that are right and that will make lead the society back to a solid fiscal footing and a solid footing.
So would you rather back a conservative candidate who's going to lose than compromise your values for a guy that can win?
I don't believe that. That's prejudging the election. When you say the guy's going to lose, you're basically saying, well, I may vote for him, but everybody out there, all those people, they wouldn't vote for him.
See, that's what I'm hoping for. I mean, we've had 4 years. I mean, even Newsweek, Newsweek
that's very
is finally saying, hit the road, Barack, we need a new president. Yeah. Even Newsweek, if we can get a shot of this. Even Newsweek, this is not, National Review.
I have both covers. The one with their hands saying, we're all socialists now in February of '09, and I bought that one too. They're like bookends.
But I mean, when you have Newsweek that's coming out against a sitting Democratic president, that means that there's some traction going on out there that we don't want to become Greece, we don't want to become Spain, we don't want to turn into some European socialist country. Now, there's still some freedom-loving Americans out there that want to say, hey, this isn't what I signed up for.
And they'd buy the magazine. Newsweek's magazine is losing readership, and they put an article on that on the cover, and what happens? They get a rush of sales. So
Chick-fil-A, you want to sell some chickens? Although I don't want to get too social.
Did you see the cover of Newsweek? It was about 6 or 7 months ago where they had that very attractive, maybe 30-something-year-old female that was standing there breastfeeding her 10-year-old son.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was right after New Year's.
What do they call that? Jumping the shark, right? I mean, I think these guys are like desperate for a little review. Well, let's try something crazy.
It's a shock
criticize
effect.
The president. Oh, we can't do that. Yeah, let's try it. What the hell? What do we got to lose?
Well, even Glenn Beck mentioned it,
Criticize the president. That's equally crazy for
They all know the facts. Fox leads all of the networks.
Okay, now Fox is another example. You bring up Fox and people in the nattering, political class. They go, a little more Chablis, please. Oh, the Fox News. Could I have a crab cake? Thank you. Oh, that's terrible group. Oh, the unwashed Tea Party. I can't stand those people.
They're classics of people in their death throes. They're going to be eclipsed by history. We're going to eclipse them because we're out there doing it. And listen,
Bob, you're scaring me. All this histrionics, you're scaring me.
80% of the people agree with our principles. I mean, what we're witnessing is a 20% mindset of the population try to rule the population against its will, and it's breaking down.
If you think my guest here is crazy, please call 203-438-2003 and tell him where he's wrong. help us out here. Show us where we're going wrong. I don't know. It just seems to be like someone somewhere wrote this stuff down about how the government is supposed to be limited. We put together this nice little document we called the Constitution, which wanted to limit the role of government and said you can't tax, you can't force people to buy, I don't know, a health insurance policy just for one. You can't force people to do these other things. We're supposed to be a free country. That's where our founders came over on boats and had their whole families potentially die on the passage to come over here. And why? Because they wanted to have freedom. They wanted to set up, I don't know, a church that could establish, a hospital. And in that hospital, if you said, we're a church sponsoring this hospital and we think it's wrong to abort unborn children. We didn't think that the government was going to come in and say, you have to do that. It seems like the government's gotten a little bit out of control. I could be wrong on this.
You're not wrong. You're not.
Well, it's easy for you to say. You're as whacked out as I am.
Give us a rundown of the candidates in Connecticut that you're supporting.
Wayne Winsley in the 3rd District running for Congress.
If he wins, it's because he was on the show, right, 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
And, very nice car, by the way.
I haven't seen it, but he's an excellent candidate. He's a full-spectrum conservative. He's taken it to DeLauro, and he's got the gumption to go take a tour.
What about Rohrabaugh? You guys behind him? I know you were behind Greenberg to begin with.
Yeah, now Rohrabaugh, he's on his own as far as...
But he might win.
He'll have to do it himself. There's only so much energy we have for places. So
Linda McMahon.
We got Winsley. Some of the Tea Party people support Linda.
Linda McMahon. You have any problem with people running around in tights, fake fighting? Is that a problem for you?
Isn't a problem for me. It's a problem for our electorate, God love her. But no.
Who else?
John Decker going up against Larson as well in the 1st District, going against John Larson. The two pure commies in the state are Larson and DeLauro, and they're just so entrenched. They completely believe in Marxism and redistribution, and all you have to do is let them talk a little bit, and it just oozes out all over. And DeLauro herself is hooked up with a communist center down in New Haven, and it's all been out in the papers and everything.
Isn't that like some of our tax dollars are going to pay for this?
Well, they were going to rehabilitate. They were going to put a new roof on it in some
like $300,000.
Yeah, and we beat that back in the spring. Yeah, that was great.
See, they slip that stuff in, hoping they don't get caught. When they get caught, they go, "Oh, that was a mistake." For example, the DNC platform, right? Yesterday, let's see, we kept out God in Jerusalem. Where the heck is that?
It was just a little mistake.
And then they get caught. And then did you see the vote on the floor? It was on YouTube today. So they take it to the floor vote, and it's supposed to be a yay or nay vote. Yeah. So the guy stands up there and says, okay, yay, and everybody goes, yay, and they said nay and nay. And you couldn't tell the difference between the amount of nays and yays and nays. So he's befuddled. He does it a second time. It's the same result. He does it a 3rd time.
Yeah, what does he think?
Finally,
he's going to get a different result?
He's looking around at everybody going, now what do I do? This woman walks up and whispers in his ear and he says, the ayes have it 2-1. It's like, how did that work?
Yeah.
So basically the Democratic platform wanted to vote that Jerusalem was not the capital of Israel.
Well, they just took
it.
They
put it in the platform, and then they said, whoa.
It had been in there, and they took it out.
Yeah,
I know,
4 years ago.
So they said, well, we got to backpedal on that, and then they said that God was in there, and now God doesn't exist. Now they voted him back in. So I guess God's good is for the Democratic Party at the last.
In an election year.
Yeah.
They really stumbled on that one. Of course.
All right, will you stick around for
Sure.
we very much want you to stay because this is something near and dear to your heart. Our next guest is George W. Schuster, and he has written a book called Obama's War on Free Speech. Maybe we can get a tight shot on this. This is a book, Obama's War on Free Speech. Now, I want you to know I'm easily impressed. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from suburban Chicago. So when you talk about these guys that are Ivy League graduates, I'm just very impressed by that. And George Schuster wrote this book. He's a graduate of Yale University. Some of you may have heard of that. It's a wonderful university of higher education here in Connecticut. And George, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marty.
Really, really appreciate it very much. I poured through this book. I underlined and wrote in the margin and everything else. And I just want to start with someone that you quoted and had a wonderful, I thought, description of what a liberal is from the liberal point of view. And this was a quote by Edward Acorn. He said, columnist Edward Acorn has put the matter well. Quote, people who believe stridently the government should be expanded to help citizens tend to suppose that anyone who disagrees must be, by definition, morally inferior and motivated by selfishness and greed. I think that really strikes the idea that, you know, you're conservative and you feel like you should be able to support yourself, and the government that governs least governs best, and you should be allowed your freedom, and that you can't lift up the wage earner by tearing down the wage payer. These kind of principles, from their point of view, say it's motivated by selfishness and greed.
Well, yeah, I love what you were just talking about, and that quote leads into the whole justification for demeaning Tea Party types and talking about how terrible they are, so that they don't have to be listened to, so that they can be silenced.
Yeah.
And if you trace the dynamic a little bit further, it gets even worse, because then when the Tea Party or anybody else speaks up in return, what are you then? You're hostile, and you must be silenced for that. So now we have two reasons. You're stupid in the first place, or badly intentioned, and then on top of that, you're also hostile. And so that's part of the regime that is going through right now in the effort to silence critics.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very, very interesting in this book, because you delineate quite specifically some concrete examples where the president and administration have tried to silence critics. And there's 3 examples. I want you to talk about them. One is spying on the Tea Party. That's very, you know, that's very. Let me get your mic up just a little bit more. There you go. Yeah, it's spying on the Tea Party. That's very threatening when a federal government is taking names and, you know, videotaping, urging Americans to rat on each other. And I have a specific example of that. You have others. And also having bloggers say, hey, you know, people that are writing in comments, you can, you know, if you're on these web pages and stuff, people can, hey, he's a jerk, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden people know who you are. That's a different problem. But
and you're
go
put
through
on the
this.
list. Yeah, well, that first one was very interesting from a number of points of view, but the very first Tea Parties, which were April 15th of 2009, Obama was just in office, but he already felt so threatened that he ordered the FBI, all 56 offices, to go out to the Tea Parties, videotape, and make lists of the names of people there. And one of the things that was amazing about it is that, like so much of this, the mainstream media didn't even pick up on it. They did not report it. They're not interested. You had to read about that in the Canadian press.
Yeah. I mean, here's the quote.
And yet, the First Amendment is their amendment.
This is the decree from the Obama administration to 56 FBI field officers, and I quote, coordinate and conduct either at the field office level and or with an appropriate resident agency covert video surveillance and data collections of participants of the Tea Party, independently and outside of the purview of local law enforcement.
In other words, do it sneakily.
This is coming from the Obama administration to 56 FBI offices. Go spy on American citizens.
And it's amazing. Why?
Oh yeah, all you liberals out there. Oh yeah, liberal, liberal, liberal. This is frickin' fascism.
Why didn't we learn about this?
I'm telling you.
It's very scary. It's the first step towards. It's a slippery slope. We talk about we're about to go to a fiscal cliff. We're sliding rapidly down a slippery slope in the First Amendment area, and you know that's just one example. And another irony is, a couple of years later, we caught the Syrians doing the same thing here. If they had a talk by some Syrian supporter of the rebels up at Harvard, the Syrian people would go there and take pictures and make lists and report back so that they could round up the family, kill, punish, whatever. Yeah. And so the U.S. government learned of this and complained bitterly and said, in the land of the free, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And of course, the setup was perfect, because the Syrian ambassador said, oh, you don't do that? Why don't you talk to your own FBI? In other words, not only do we have this going on in the land of the free, but then when we complain to other countries, we look totally silly.
Yeah.
He's ruining.
A little hypocritical.
Our reputation as a free land is going down the drain as a result of these antics.
I want to just share. I want to be a little transparent with you. I don't know you that well, but I want to set the scene for you. In our kitchen, my wife is huddled at the computer, and she loves that Drudge Report, and she's going on and on. I'm usually watching football in the family room or golf on TV or something like that. I'm not quite as into it as she is. She tells me that there's a White House website that says if you find anyone criticizing Obamacare, send in the website to us, send them their email to us so we can straighten them out. If you see anything fishy, And it's on the White House website. I said, honey, you've been reading that Drudge Report too much. You're watching Fox TV too much. You're getting a little soft in the brain. That can't possibly be on a White House website. I go to the website, there it is.
Right.
I mean, what the heck are we talking about?
It was. They're very sneaky. There was, as soon as that came to light, there was such an outrage that they pulled it. In fact, I say in the book, I wish they hadn't pulled it quite so fast, because I wanted to get on it and say, I know a critic. I know somebody who would love to say many fishy things, and his name is George W. Schuster.
Yeah,
and I didn't get a chance to do that.
This is like the Nixon enemy list.
Right.
You know, I just love. I love the.
It's worse.
Oh, you know, all government is one. What about your own guy? What about Barack Obama? And what's going on from his administration? Thin skin, can't take criticism. What did President Truman say? If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Part of being in politics is a contact sport. You can't stifle the First Amendment just because you don't like the criticism. You just can't do that.
They keep talking about Nixon and his enemies list.
Enemies
do you
list.
remember how
Forget
many
about
people were on that list? 30.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah, that was totally different.
Yeah.
This man rules by intimidation, and the tragic mistake they're making is they think they can intimidate us.
Yeah.
And they couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
We're not the type of people, we've already come out and taken the slings and arrows. We're not going to be intimidated by any of this, and they don't realize that. And he's gotten his way in his political career by intimidating other people. And it's not going to happen, and he's going to provoke a crisis if he keeps going on that path.
Yeah, I was shocked at this kind of idea, like, hey, let the government know about anyone that's saying anything bad about this Obamacare, because we got to ram this thing through no matter what. And you can talk to the example of Humana or one of these actual
the third
institutions.
example that ties into this is what they asked bloggers to do. Now, once they were caught with this White House and they pulled it back, they still thought this is a very clever thing for us to do in order to make lists. We need to know all the critics.
Yeah.
So they sent out to liberal bloggers, and we still don't know because the press never followed up to find out how extensive this was. But they sent out to liberal bloggers figuring they're our friends, they won't tell that we're doing this. So they asked the liberal bloggers, if you get any fishy comments coming in, let us know. And by the way, here's a gag order to make sure that you don't tell anybody. You have a subpoena to give us this list, but you also have to keep quiet. Some liberals are actually in favor.
I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that one.
This one who got it in Philadelphia contacted a lawyer, and they were honest enough to say, wait a minute, hold on, this violates the First Amendment. This is outrageous. But you see, they were trying to do through the back door what they had failed to do, and this is typical of their behavior, that if they're ever caught, they come at it a different way. And that's just as outrageous.
They never stop.
No,
they never stop. They never stop.
Yeah,
they're underestimating us for one thing. They thought they could roll the whole country once he was elected.
Bob, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
One of the only saving grace in this whole thing is that they totally miscalculated, and there still is a voice of freedom still left in America. And actually, it's even better than we weren't silenced. People got energized.
Yeah.
More energized than before.
Yeah, well, that's Tea Party. We got out there.
Well, I'll tell you, this kind of like you call about the rat culture or rat society, urging Americans to rat on one another and this kind of thing.
It's such a classic. You read about that with the Soviets and the Nazis. That's just what they did, and they went at the children, and they tell the children in school, if your parents are talking like this at home, let us know. And
this is liberal, progressive government. They get a little bit of power, and all of a sudden, here they are, trying to micromanage everything. And I'm telling you, I try not to buy into all this stuff because I'm thinking I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be a Bob MacGuffie someday.
Yeah.
And, we can't have that happen. And by the way, if there's an enemy list, Bob MacGuffie, I can get you his email. I know where he lives. And I think you would want to be a member of the enemies list too, right? George Schuster, Yale alumni, you're in the book. Marty Heiser, right here. Put us on the enemies list. I
have a very low number on that list.
If I wasn't on that enemies list, I would feel, I don't know, my feelings would be hurt. I want to be on the top of that list.
Marty, there's something kind of amusing. You might be amused at this. I was in the same law school class at Yale Law School as Bill and Hillary.
There you go.
And
any study sessions
together? Did you know them?
Did you ever meet them?
Mostly liberals. And this book just came out, and so they have a nice little feature, and it comes out twice a year or so. The Yale Alumni Report. It's like the alumni magazine for the law school, and they'll put in books that have been written by alumni. So I sent in, and they promised they're going to put it in. Of course, the next issue, just the timing-wise, is next January, where you know, we'll see in November something's going to happen. But I'm surprised. They know the title of the book. They know the information on it, and they're being even-handed, which I give them credit for.
Oh, so your book was put out there. And by the way, if we
a little blurb on it will be in the January Yale Law Report.
Yeah. Okay, Obama's War on Free Speech. You can Google this book, Obama's War on Free Speech. This is non-commercial public access, so I can't, you know, endorse you buying it or whatever. But I'm just saying, right here. Bing, bing, bing. This is the book, and I'm telling you, it's a fascinating read. Now, what I was saying is I'm a little concerned about turning into a Bob MacGuffie, a conspiracy theorist. All of a sudden, I'm afraid of black helicopters and everything else. I'm avoiding that tendency. But when my wife pointed out that on the White House website it says Senate, I got a little skeptical. And then also, and this is, you know, I have a little painting business, and the EPA, you know, they talk about intrusive overregulation. I'm living this. The EPA says you got to spend $650 to go to this lead abatement seminar thing, and you go, and there's some interesting information in there. But then the employee or the representative of the federal government says to the contractors, hey, listen, guys, you guys all played ball with the big nanny government. You did this, and you got certified. Any of your competitors that haven't done this, you let us know. You drop a dime on them, because we can find them $34,000. We'll put them right out of business. You just drop a dime on them and let them know who isn't coming to the federal government and playing ball. And there was one supplier in Ridgefield that heard about this, and they were doing these seminars, kicked them right out. He said, you know, this is crazy, where the government is that involved in your life that you have to, you know, go to them to somehow, you know, it's Solyndra writ large. Yeah, where if you're in good with the government, oh boy, you're a bundler for Obama, you're set. If you're playing ball,
the objective is to push and to push small businesses out of business, because a small business is the greatest way for an individual of modest means to get liberty and financial security and all the rest and have power. Yeah. And they don't want that. They don't want that. They want to control the business. They want big business. And so they make licensing and all kinds of regulations to limit your ability to go into business for yourself.
Marty, in that example you just gave, what I'm focusing on is the ratting on your fellow citizens. That's what this government really tries to promote. And the book I wrote is very serious. It's heavily footnoted. Everything is documented. And there's a lot of quotations from the jurisprudence of the First Amendment. Yeah. And there's a lot of talk in
I'm liking Thomas Jefferson over Alexander Hamilton, by the way. We're going way back to that.
All the great believers of the First Amendment, like Justice Black, for example, stress again and again, we don't want a rat society in this country. They even use that phraseology, because that has been true of dictators and tyrants throughout history. Yeah. You rule in a more oppressive way if you can only get the citizenry to tell tales on each other and report to the government so that people can be punished and
Caller, you're not going to turn me into the federal government about what we're talking about today, are you?
No, not tonight, Marty.
Thank you, because I have a family, I have to feed them. I just don't want, you know, the government knocking on my door in a black coat, you know, coming down. So please, not that many people watch this show, so I think we're all lucky. But do you have a question for the author?
Yeah, I don't think the helicopters will be taking you away anytime soon.
Good.
Now, why is it so anti-American to say that taxes are so high? I mean, I was raised in Ridgefield. I live in Danbury now. We have a mayor that's raised taxes every year since he's been in office, except for one. I don't think it's anti-American to say, hey, why are these taxes so high? Because, you know, high taxes do drive business and people out. Two other things. Last night when Mr. Clinton spoke, he mentioned some job figures, I guess, since 1951. I'd like to find out where he got that info from, because I'm really doubtful that that info was correct. He was comparing jobs created by the Democrats and the Republicans. And also, did you see that shot of a woman holding up her Medicare card? On the first shot, you could clearly read her Social Security numbers, but on the second shot, they blurred it, so you couldn't do that. Well, anyway, we'll see what Obama Biden Obama says tonight, okay? And good show.
All right, thanks for calling in. What about what he said? There was a lot there.
What related most to the First Amendment is it's absolutely totally American for the American people to say taxes are too high. As a matter of fact, the first Americans that led to the revolution were saying exactly the same thing, and we thought it was a terrific thing to do that.
You know, you talk about the Rat Society. I love in your book because you know the Tea Party, those Mohawks that put the tea in the Boston Harbor way back when. None of them got caught. Nobody ratted them out. You mentioned that in the book. Yeah,
we have some outstanding examples, not just in our country, but when tyrants try to get people to rat, they sometimes catch somebody who's in a group, and so often it's just been repeated over and over and over again. During the Inquisition, and we had many examples in the Revolution where the British would post substantial awards, you know, in pounds that would make them set up for life, and nobody told on anybody else.
Yeah, because there was a common love of freedom. It's like enough with the government. We don't need the nanny state telling us how large our soft drinks can be. You know, we don't need the nanny state to, you know, like they have that video or that website where you go and the single woman, you know, through her life goes from one entitlement to the next. I think Paul Ryan talked about that in his speech, an adventureless existence that's dictated by
Julia, right?
Yeah, Julia. Yeah, you know, that whole thing. Okay, I want to go. We're in the lightning round now. Now you have kind of a rogues gallery of different examples. I'm going to go through them of attacking political critics, accusations of potentially criminal behavior. We have a couple. We have Solyndra, we have the auto company bondholders, Humana, the Chamber of Commerce, we have British Petroleum, Fox News, illegal immigration opponents, student loan business, Koch, the Koch brothers, and Karl Rove. These are all victims of what you're trying to stifle First Amendment. Give us a little snapshot of each of those.
Well, not of each, but let me just collapse a few of those together. The worst kind, and many of those examples, but not all, are in this category, is when if they don't like what you're saying, they accuse you of criminal behavior. Yeah. In some cases, even so bold as to say it's your words that are criminal. Yeah. I mean, the First Amendment makes that absolutely wrong. You know, a good example of people punished, actually the best example, before Obama even got elected, he had his campaign manager, a guy named Bauer, I believe. You may know that name, Bob Bauer. But he wrote a letter to the Department of Justice saying, we want you to investigate and indict anybody who's making references to William Ayers, Reverend Wright, or Acorn, the group, because that is interfering with the democratic electoral process. Now, this is totally free speech, totally political.
How could he dream that one up?
He wants to criminalize a political campaign.
That's documented. And some of the examples that you just read through, those are also of the nature of, let's call him a criminal. They actually called Romney a felon the other day.
Yeah. I mean, you see the full the full arsenal on attack here with Mitt Romney, where they're coming out. The head of the campaign is saying basically you're a felon, and then the president gets up there at the one interview he does. It isn't like Entertainment Tonight or some kind of radio talk show in New Mexico. It says, I don't think anyone called him a felon. Your campaign manager just called him a felon. You have an interview which apparently Jim Himes has never seen. The commercial where it says that he was part of having a woman die of cancer tragically.
They may have some kind of lid on the simple fact that both Michelle Obama in like 1993 and Barack Obama in 2008, each of them had to surrender their law licenses in Illinois just before actions were taken against them. And and they both have had to surrender. Nobody ever brings it up. Nobody ever brings it up.
I'll tell you that movie 2016, I think it is. Have you seen it?
Awesome.
Have you seen that movie,
Sure.
2016?
Yes.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, go
Connects
see
the
it.
dots.
Go see it while you still can, because I'm sure there's something illegal about sharing information about someone who's in public office, or will be soon.
Could we somehow ask the press to do their job? One of the main themes to the book is that the mainstream media is not reporting on this, even though the First Amendment is their amendment, the amendment that was set up to protect them. And just to take it as an example, go back to that blogger that was sent a subpoena and a gag order. When that did come out, because one of them was brave enough to say, this is what I got, the natural question in anybody's mind would be, how many other bloggers all over this fruited plain got similar things? Do you think the mainstream media investigated that? Did they ask Obama? How many, or the Department of Justice, how many of these subpoenas did you send out? And by the way, what was the purpose? And where's the list that you generated? And what are you going to do with it? And so on and so forth. Not a single question. Why not?
You know, I'll tell you, as an American, there's just something that really grates against me, and it always has my entire life, and that's a bully. I just don't like a bully. I don't like him. I'll fight him even if I'm going to lose the fight. I just don't like a bully. I don't like seeing people pick on someone that's weaker than them. And I'm telling you, I do not like a federal oppressive government that's coming down, and anyone that disagrees with them, they're going to come down with the Department of Justice and everything else and bully them. I don't like it. And I got to think that there's other people in Connecticut that feel somewhat the same.
Sure.
That say, hey, this isn't right. I mean, liberal Democrat, you're sitting in your house right now. No one's watching. The government isn't going to come and knock on the door. But does any part of this not ring true to you as a freedom-loving American? I mean, if this was a Republican doing this crap, I mean, come on. I mean, there'd be people marching in the streets. Really? I mean, think about it. All the people that voted for President Obama. Think about it. In your heart of hearts, you can't like what you're hearing. Now, maybe this guy's all washed up. I mean, MacGuffie, geez, Tea Party. We know. But this guy, he went to Yale, for God's sake. He wrote a book. I can't even read this much. Look, he wrote it. I mean, it's incredible. It's got to give you a little bit of a pause and say, you know what? You know, we really didn't like Bush. We were sick of the wars, and then the economy collapsed, so we took a runner on this president. But, you know, it's been 4 years of this kind of crap, and the economy isn't getting any better. Maybe it's time to give this Mormon guy a shot. I don't believe he's a felon, and I don't believe he killed anyone. As a matter of fact, I think he's kind of a nice guy, nice wife, nice family, and the guy knows business. I'm telling you, ever been to Dick's Sporting Goods? You ever been to the Sports Authority? You ever been to some of these Staples, all these businesses he's turned around? In America right now, we need a turnaround, and it's in the business private sector. This printing money and doing everything through the public sector just ain't working. Think about it. Think about it. That's all I'm asking. Think about it. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, I actually, you know, we didn't really talk about, and I don't want to get into the sort of what might be more wonky, but some of the book, and people would have to go through this, gives the background of how important the First Amendment is. Yeah. It's the last remaining bulwark we have against an oppressive government. And I could tick off all the other safeguards that were built into the Constitution that have been forgotten years and years ago. We still have the First Amendment, and I agree with Bob. It's there for a reason, and people are using it. We're speaking up. I'm speaking up. This book is just a small part of people who are not cowed.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And he agrees with these crazy Tea Party people.
I'm telling you. I love the Tea Party. There was so much fun going out there interviewing all these people, you know, minorities and foreigners. It's like, I thought this was supposed to be.
Marty, the press are selling us out. They are selling us out. They think they're part of the chosen, and they're going to be on the ruling clique and elite, and that's why they're doing it. Oh. And they're accelerating this, and they're selling us out. And they are a major reason to be blamed why we're in the state we're in.
And Marty, my final word is thank you.
Well, thank you.
That's two words. I'm like a Biden.
Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming in. The book again, Obama's War on Free Speech. Get it while you still can, before the federal government comes and closes down the bookstores and public access television. Please, while you still can, avail yourself of this information before the book burning begins. And that might happen. Thank you so much. I'm just kidding about the book burning. I'm sure that won't happen. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank my guests, George W. Schuster and Bob MacGuffie, and of course, John Shaban of the 134th District. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week, because on the Marty Heiser Show, you always get the truth. And we'll see you next week. I'm going to do a Sean Hannity. There we go.